Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Friday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, a big and furry bovine. Joining me on the panel today, Derek Frisbee, the man, the myth, the legend. He's from DF Sports. And Brian, who is being himself. And Double P Peter Powell. How you doing, Peter?
Yep, that would be me.
That would be you. Okay. And hello to Cindy Sanders. And, what you're going to discover is as things change, we still talk about the Cleveland Browns, but there's more to life than the dead end of a season. And we begin our discussion of how to patch up the Cleveland Browns. But at the same time, I'm going to dedicate half of the program to NBA trade deadline and what the Cavaliers need to do to become stronger. And so that way we're talking up two different Cleveland franchises at the same time. And when was the last time you heard me do that?
Probably Browns and Indians.
Yeah, I mean, and baseball, that's just, with 162 games, it goes on forever. All right, how do we start this? The news, there are some things I can never, and this is going to hurt your ears, Brian, but I'm going to say it anyway. I know that you're not very happy with the prospects of the Cleveland Browns having a mediocre quarterback, and that you feel that two of those candidates, Teddy Bridgewater and who's the other one?
Geno Smith,
are, I'll politely say reclamation projects. I'm not going to use your linguistics. However, the Houston Texans firing David Culley is an absolute sack of shit. And it isn't, look, any general manager and owner has the right to hire and fire who they want. But when you call a press conference to basically say, okay, Nick Caserio did for the Texans, he's the GM. And I'll tell you what he said. This is unbelievable. Quote.
Who was just hired, by the way. He's not been there long.
Right. I would say when you rewind here and go back to a year ago, I say the organization was in a pretty rough spot. And I think from where we were then to where we are now, we're in a lot better position, Caserio said. And quite frankly, I think that's because of the leadership and the guidance and the direction that David Culley brought to this football team. Caserio said in a statement Thursday that he decided to fire Culley because he and the coach had philosophical differences over the long-term direction and vision for our program moving forward. He declined to go into specifics about those differences, but said they had to do with next steps or how we move forward, not necessarily rear view mirror about what has happened. In the end, this is my decision, Caserio said. This was something that I felt we needed to do that was in the best interest of the organization. Now, if that's the best that you can come up with as a general manager to say, this guy really did a great job from getting us from the shithole that we were in last year to a shallower shithole, and did it without a quarterback, did it without, he had no chance whatsoever. And he's 65 years old, and he's getting his first opportunity as a head coach. And your comment is basically, we had philosophical differences. I'm going to call horseshit. Absolute horseshit on this. Because the GM comes in and wants to hire his guy. All right? There are people who are screaming racism. And this is what really gives the NFL a bad name. If you're telling me that the guy did a really good job to professionalize the organization during an absolute downturn, Why would you not let him have a say in what things and where things would go in the future? Why would you not want the input of an experienced guy who's been in football for a lot longer than Nick Casario has? Why wouldn't you want that input? Why wouldn't you give him an opportunity to succeed? And the answer is
The buddy
David
system.
Culley was a typical African American NFL hire. Those are the guys like Brian Flores who get fired. Did Brian Flores deserve to get fired? Well,
Hell no. Hell
I mean, the issue with that was that he obviously didn't believe in Tua. And that was obvious last year. Well, I mean, he played Fitzpatrick in important situations. He would pull Tua out of the game and let 38-year-old guy play. So obviously, Tua's not his guy. And they obviously in Miami felt that was a good excuse to fire him. But he went 10-6 and 9-8 in 2 seasons, and the Dolphins haven't seen daylight for a long time. The other thing is that Flores is a defensive coach. And if he wasn't real high on Tua, maybe you needed a stronger offensive coordinator or whatever the case may be. But this is what gives the NFL a bad name. And David Culley got screwed. And the Texans organization is in the shape that it's in because the ownership of the team is screwed up. And if one guy, their quarterback, who is, of course, accused of all kinds of things by a lot of people, if that is the demise of your team over this period of time in your mind, you would be ignoring the previous couple of years where you've been nowhere, even with Deshaun Watson. So to me, it's just a sign of the times. Teams will fire head coaches, and, that's the way it works. And I am in total disagreement with the way the whole system works. Myles Garrett, Joel Bitonio, first team All-Pros, Wyatt Teller, second string. And that's good news, I suppose. Andrew Berry is encouraged by the Browns' top rookie players, and well, he should be. I mean, Koromoa and Newsome are fine football players, and Anthony Schwartz isn't. And we're going to get them all back, and you're going to get Hudson the third back too, because he loves the guys he drafted. Why, of course he does. But I'm encouraged from the standpoint that we got some coverage guys once they finally started using them in the proper capacity, that they actually shut teams down and got teams off the field on third down. So that's a wonderful thing.
More importantly, kept the fucking opposing offenses under 17 points quite a few times this season.
Yeah, I mean, the opportunities were there for the Browns, obviously. They just didn't take them. And that's all on the offensive side of the ball. And you know how I have complained vehemently early in the season about the defense and in previous years about the defense. A new position coach for Myles Garrett. Go ahead.
I literally took the D out of the man's name. He was Joe Woos most of the year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he started finally playing the guys who should have been playing, and it took everyone to get injured and whatever for Koromoa to get a chance, and he was the second best rookie linebacker. Guy in Dallas was clearly better because his stats were better. He played all 16 games, but Koromoa was a difference maker when he was on the field.
Do you count Parsons as a linebacker? Because I consider him
He's
a
an
TJ Watt edge. Yeah.
Well,
I think Koromoa is the best pure linebacker.
Kind of like a Kevin Green. Parsons reminds me more like Kevin Green.
Well, but you could make the argument that Koromoa is kind of part linebacker, part safety. You can make that argument. So Again, if you're stating by position, Cormoa should be the second place guy in that conversation. But that we haven't seen the best out of Cormoa. He's got to be healthy. Myles Garrett's going to have a new position coach as you want to talk about nepotism.
Kiffin.
Chris Kiffin is joining his brother Lane at Ole Miss, and I don't know. He's going to be a co-offensive coordinator, and this is a very interesting thing. Why would Chris Kiffin bail out for the ability to be second banana with his brother and second banana sharing a position as a D-line coach? He was named the co-defensive coordinator of Ole Miss with possible D-line or linebacker coaching duties. How is that a better gig than what he had in Cleveland?
Yeah, and they're losing their star quarterback.
Yeah, I mean,
Matt Corral.
keep an eye on the coaching staff because already teams are looking to raid front office people from the Browns. But keep your eye on the coaching staff. It might give us a clearer idea of what's really going on behind the scenes that I can only guess at.
And how much does this change affect Jadeveon Clowney's decision if they make him an offer? Because it could be that he really loved his defensive line coach. Maybe he didn't like him somewhere else. Could play a factor, possibly.
Well, Andrew Berry threw shade on Jarvis Landry and did just the opposite for Jadeveon Clowney. But Clowney has rejuvenated his career with the most sacks that he's had tied in his career. And he is going to make money. And he will have a lot of opportunities to go different places. And we've been in this position before. And to stay in Cleveland after this disappointing a season, it's going to take more money perhaps than the Browns want to pay. And he will get paid damn good money after the year he had.
Do you really think that he has like a market? Because he's kind of more of a run stopper than like a pass rush guy.
He's a run stopper with 9 sacks and he plays the edge.
Yeah. And he went from one sack or no sacks last season to 9 sacks.
Now you can make the case that he's going to owe part of his money that he gets to Myles Garrett because having that other guy on the other side, obviously.
Well, and that was going to be my point. Was this is the most success he's had in the NFL since his rookie or first 2 years with J.J. Watt.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, obviously, who lines up, on the other side of the line? It can make your life harder or it can make your life easier. And he is a good run stopper. I agree with you, Peter. But at the same time, the analytics people, they say, well, the rap on him was that he was a good run defender, but he couldn't rush the quarterback. And now he comes up with 9 sacks and he really did a great job against the run. Who doesn't want that from their edge?
He made the play to win it against the Ravens.
Yeah. I mean, there are going to be a lot of people interested in him for sure. So I'm going to open this up to my panel and I'm going to go directly as they appear on my screen. We'll start with Derek. Position of need. The Browns have multiple positions of need. I want you to tell me the top 3 positions of need. I don't want to go beyond that. We want to go what you envision as the top 3 positional needs for the Browns to get back to where they were in 2020.
I think the number one is the most obvious and the easiest. And luckily for Andrew Berry, I think the easiest to fix this offseason right now, and that's wide receiver. And obviously we'll talk about that more later. Second, I would go defensive tackle because I think you have a lot of guys that could be out. And how confident are you in Tommy Togiai and the other guy who I can't remember, Jordan Elliott? So I think that's my number 2. And my number 3 is backup quarterback. Regardless of what the system is, Case Keenum as a player, in my opinion, is just not good enough anymore. I think we need to bring in somebody to push Baker, assuming he is the guy. At the very least, they need somebody who, if Baker's too hurt next year, because injuries happen all the time, there should be no excuses why this team can't get into the playoffs. So I think receiver number 1, defensive tackle 2, and then backup quarterback 3. And if you cut Keenum, that's $6 million you got.
All right, Brian?
My list is going to be a little bit different than Derek's. I've got wide receiver at 1. I've got right tackle at 2 and defensive tackle at 3. Because Conklin is way too hurt, way too often, and really puts the team at a complete disadvantage when you're trying to have consistent run blocking, consistent pass blocking. And so I think that's going to be a position where they're actually going to bring in more, probably 2 veterans to spell that position.
All right, Double P?
So obviously 1 receiver, 2 I think also right tackle, and I think honestly with Hudson too. The thing with him is he's kind of like he's strong, but he's kind of unathletic, and I think we can really convert him to guard and to the interior with a lot of our like our best linemen are getting older, and then I think for the third one, depending on if we resign Clowney, I would say edge, but if we don't resign him, if we do resign him, I would say tackle.
Right. And I'm in agreement with Brian and Peter. Wide receiver is the obvious situation at hand, but the right tackle position is there are questions whether with the injuries that Conklin had and his history of injuries, whether he's going to be ready to start the season next year. And if so, he's, not. Well, let me just put it this way. And I'm reading Dactar saying that there's no video but mine, and I totally lost my train of thought.
I'll check it. Hold on.
Yeah, there should be. Nobody else is seeing that except for Dactar. And that's what acid can do. It can do that to you. But the right tackle situation needs to be shored up because it certainly can't be Blake Hance. I think he pretty well gets pushed back into the quarterback. And Hudson, even though, I think the team is higher on Hudson, there may be truth to moving him to a guard position. And then you have to start looking at college offensive tackles, or you bring in a stopgap veteran offensive tackle and hope hope that he stays healthy. Number 3 is and the defensive line. So much happens if Clowney signs someplace else, and I think there is a 75% chance he goes away. And if that's the case, that puts us right back where we were a couple years ago with, without an edge. So
see, I'm more 50-50 on that.
And we can all guess.
But this is the happiest he's been on a team, and
they all say that
he's had on a team. Well, but his body language speaks volumes compared to other guys on the team. And
I'm sure
Mayfield and fucking Landry. Like,
I'd be happy if I was basically on a prove it contract and I hit the slot machine and it came up triples,
He could have been in Cleveland 2 years ago, but he didn't want to.
That's right. And that speaks volumes. It's like, thank you for getting me to where I want to go. Because the beauty of being able to stay in the league, I mean, once you're gone, nobody wants to touch you with a 10-foot pole. In the case of Jadeveon Clowney, and I know, having lived up in South Carolina for a number of years, half of the year, he was like a god, a legend up there. And it didn't really ever totally happen for him. And now at this point in his career, he can say that, hey, this is the high water mark for me, and this is going to be where I make the most money, or go to a team that, will pay me more than the Cleveland Browns. And then you'll find out how much happy really means, because in the end, some players get the money and fall back into the ways they were and are satisfied making big coin on a less than competitive team. And other guys want to play, in a system that works for them, or with a better team. We'll see. But what defensive lineman we need? I mean, Malik McDowell is going to be on the market, and Malik McDowell had a good year. I mean, he got hurt, he got sick, and all that, but he had a good year, and somebody's going to target him. I guarantee you. The defensive line was something we were worried about.
I think the Ravens or the Steelers would go after him,
especially the Steelers.
Yeah. So go ahead.
This might be a bad idea, but I just thought of something. So I know Olivier Vernon, he got hurt. And say, for instance, we re-signed, if Clowney wanted to re-sign, would you be against moving Clowney inside and then having Vernon back on the outside? Because he was solid in the run game. And I know his pass rush was sometimes, but would you be against that, especially knowing his market would be down?
I don't see Vernon coming back to the team.
I don't see that ever happening either. And I don't see that Clowney. I mean, Clowney holds the cards right now. He ain't moving inside. I mean, it would be
maybe
like
in certain packages, but not as a full-time thing.
No.
Yeah, I mean, it's that was just not going to be something that would happen. The wide receiver situation. I wanted to ask you a question first, Derek, because you know these guys. And
I can't wait to talk about this. I've been waiting for
Same.
the last 2 days.
Yeah, but I was looking at the offensive tackle, the right tackle thing, and there's a kid, I believe, in Minnesota. He's like 6'8".
Falele, I mean.
He's like 6'8" and 370 pounds.
Yeah, there's a couple really good ones.
I mean, and they're
380,
talking, yeah, and they're talking about him. He's going to have to trim down from that to play in the NFL, but he's a monster. And they're talking about him second round. I mean, am I off base here?
I wouldn't be against that.
Here's the thing about the draft this year. It's going to be top heavy with defensive players, offensive linemen, and then once you get towards about 10 where we're picking is when you could start seeing receivers and quarterbacks. So ahead of us,
picking 13. Am I wrong?
Yeah, we're picking 13, but I'm saying around 10, about where near we're at, is where you're going to start seeing possibly a receiver, or you're going to see quarterbacks. Because another thing with these coaching fires, you got to look at New York. Are they going to keep Daniel Jones, or is this new coach going to want to draft a quarterback with one of their picks? Houston's an interesting one, and there's a couple others. But as far as him, I don't know. I think the question is going to be, does the draft fall how a lot of people think it falls? Are some teams going to take risks on quarterbacks over a safe pick in offensive line. If that's the case, then yes, I could see him falling. But if it goes how I think it's going to go, I don't see him in the second round. I see him more as a possible late mid to late first round pick. But we'll see. Stranger things have
I
happened.
want to ask Heston what's going on. I hate to hear people in the hospital. Scares the hell out of me, as a matter of fact. You
You don't
know,
want to be there. There's too many sick people.
yeah, and let us know how you're doing, what's going on there, because every person who listens to this program, people say, well, would you want to be like Joe Rogan and have like million viewers? And the answer is no. I wouldn't know any of them. I would know nothing about any of them. I wouldn't have panelists, and I wouldn't know anything about. I would just be staring out at a million people. And if that makes your dick hard, that's fine. I always joke, say this is a boutique radio program in essence that's on the internet. And I hope, Heston, that you get well. But the only reason I do this program is because I like sports. I've been a Cleveland sports fan since I was a kid. It comes naturally to me. I would be watching the games whether I did the show or not, and it's not that much of a sacrifice doing 2 shows a week. So, I hope that Heston is all right. I hope it's not the C word. But
The thing I saw about the Minnesota tackle, I saw that he's kind of new to playing football. He just started playing, and he's from Australia. And I saw some teams kind of view him as a project. So I know he might be a day 2 type of pick. So maybe we can get him in the second round. But I saw some people saying it might be a reach, and he's more like a third round type guy.
yeah, I'm going to look at film on the guy because, again, we're not in a position, I don't believe, where, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, with the needs that the team has. I don't know how many good offensive tackles there are, but we can't afford an offensive tackle in the first round and to use our pick there.
There's a couple good ones in the second, though, that I got my eyes on. There's one from Michigan who I like a lot.
And the Ohio State one too. I'm forgetting his name.
Munford.
Yep.
No, I would say stay
What's
away.
the other one?
I think Petit
it starts with a
Frere
P.
is in the
Yeah,
Nicholas Petit Frere. I think he might.
I'm
be
seeing
in the
him
draft.
fall.
Yeah, he's neither of the Ohio State offensive linemen will go very early. I'll say that. Not that they're bad. It's just I don't know. I got some reservations about them.
And so we all agree that wide receiver is the first way to go. And there will be, Heston, I promise, a Cavs conversation as well. The top 10 receivers, okay, by PFF grade, at any rate. Odell Beckham, I know that's a dirty name. Russell Gage out of for Atlanta. AJ Green, the ancient one, 33 years old, coming off of a 70.4 PFF grade. Who'd have thunk? T.Y. Hilton, he's 32 years old.
But
And
still has decent speed.
Yeah, but a decent speed I don't need right now. I mean, we're not talking about. It isn't a matter of getting a guy who is a wide receiver. We need to hit the jackpot.
Yep.
We need to have a guy, and a lot of these guys, T.Y. Hilton, we're talking about guys who are shorter guys. They're talking Michael Gallup, who
That's
just
the
had
one I like.
Yeah, but the knee
Gallup
injury might bring his price down. And he was a 3rd round pick, and he had 35 receptions this year for 445 yards. So to be very honest with you, that's not the big home run hitter that this team needs to spread the field, and especially coming off of an ACL injury. Not necessarily the greatest thing. Christian Kirk is 5'11".
I like him too in a Jarvis Landry type role.
Yeah,
depending on who
again,
you
that's what we're
draft.
going to get to in just a minute, because then you've got Mike Williams from the Chargers, and he's unrestricted free agent. He reached 1,000 yards this season for the second time in his career, and he is a guy who can break the deep pattern, and he has proven at the professional level that he can go deep. Chris Godwin, of course, now you're getting into the more rarefied air. He's 25 years old, 1,100 yards of receiving in the last year. Antonio Brown, that no one's going to touch with a 10-foot pole. And Devontae Adams, who, if you're having a wet dream, that's the name that comes into your mind.
There was a name that you didn't say that I do like, and I think the Browns might get him because he'll be cheaper, is DJ Chark coming out of Jacksonville. I like him a lot. But
Chark is also not he's more of a possession guy. And again, if you have a choice to make and you're going to draft a wide receiver in the first round, and it's got to be a guy who spreads the field, because if you look at the Browns now, they just don't have any separation in their receivers. What do? You go with a bigger, taller, faster, more of a big play field spreader, and you keep Jarvis Landry, who is still a more than acceptable slot receiver, or do you let him walk, which is what Andrew Berry made it sound like? Yep. Thank you for your service.
Yeah.
But then you don't have a proven slot receiver. You cannot draft a slot receiver in the first round, I don't believe. That would force you to take 2 wide receivers in the draft.
Second and third rounds, you'll be able to get slot. Anyway. Yeah, I agree with that. And like I told you, I have my list.
And they can easily just tackle that in free agency.
No, they have to draft somebody, because you have to have Donovan Peoples-Jones and
I grant you that John Taylor and fucking Willie Anderson aren't in the free agency market in this fucking century, but you got to do something with the draft.
I'm saying draft the outside receiver, and then we just go like a Gallup or a Kirk or something for the slot.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking as well, Double P.
And that would make more sense, and who you can attract to Cleveland, because I think it's almost, and it's a shame in a way. I get it. Jarvis Landry's been hurt, and I know that what Andrew Berry did on
seriously vicious hits, especially against the Steelers.
In the bright lights,
several times.
Yeah, the top man in the front office basically said thanks, but no thanks. So we're going to be looking at both of those things.
He's looking at the $15 million salary, saying, "We're going to pay him all this money to sit on the fucking bench,
and at his age,
can't do it." So, yeah, I think he's going to be moving it on.
So
and I think he's going to be happier moving to somewhere else, especially on the left coast, so that he can still hang out with his buddy.
And Derek, what is your list? You say you have a list of wide receivers that you're kind of high on in the early going. Who do you really think the Browns could land as far as a free agent slot receiver that is realistic that we would be able to get?
I think Christian Kirk is interesting, because I'm not sure if teams will look at him as a potential number 1, or if they look at him as his role on the Cardinals, because when you're surrounded by DeAndre Hopkins and all these other guys like that, it's easy to our teams might think it's easy to put up numbers. So if he's cheap, I would like that a lot. I've always been a pretty big fan of him. If it's not him, to me, it's a DJ Chark, because, when you talk about the Mike Williams, I don't think he fits the system. I think Cleveland's looking for a specific type of receiver, and that's kind of what I get into as far as the draft. But they're going to look for guys who are good route runners, they're fast enough, and they have good hands. And I think that's what you're going to see draft-wise. I think that's what you're going to see free agency-wise. So I don't see a Mike Williams, as great as he is, and other big possession receivers. I don't see that.
Right.
Yeah, but look at how many long touchdowns Mike Williams has caught.
For the Chargers.
Yeah, for the Chargers. I think you can get some good use out of that guy, especially with the body size of, another David Njoku out there running around.
And DPJ
what I'm going to be doing here is stopping Browns talk and sliding the Cavs talk. And the reason I'm doing it is what we established here is the top 3 needs positionally. And now we're going to take a look, and I will put a 4th because Derek was talking about a backup quarterback. And between now and Monday, I'm going to be doing my research. I know Derek's going to be doing his. And everybody else, Peter, you as well, because we love to have extra voices. And Brian, let's start narrowing down what people we like at these positions. And I'll take on the backup quarterback situation too, and we'll go from there. I want to talk about the Cavaliers for more than just one reason. One is that they're actually vital and they're winning. As bad a fortune as the Browns had, the Cavaliers have had some good fortune playing teams that have been crippled by COVID. And in a number of games where you would not have expected the Cavaliers to win, they've won because big name, top name players have been out of the lineup. The Cavs have been hit too, to be sure, but not to the degree that some of the opposition that they've played, especially road opposition, where the Cavs now have a really good road record, and they continue to win on this West Coast swing. We're in action again tonight, 8:30 against the Spurs. The Spurs are going to have a couple guys missing, but it's been a fun ride. The other reason is because February 10th is the NBA trade deadline. And having watched the Cavaliers, I've watched every single game, all 42 of them, and I haven't missed a play in any of the season. And I've taken this long to talk about it to kind of get the catharsis of the Brown season out of me and hopefully out of you too. And I'm looking at a team that is well coached, just listening to the coach, is playing selflessly. The Cavaliers lost Colin Sexton. People thought that was the kiss of death. It may have been the best thing that could have happened, because sharing the basketball wasn't exactly Colin Sexton's thing. He tends to dribble the ball into the ground, and it allowed Darius Garland to become the primary ball handler instead of sharing those duties and trying to teach Sexton how to assist when Sexton was really all about scoring the ball. It's given Darius Garland the opportunity to flex some of his muscles offensively. If you don't know, right now Darius Garland in the last couple of games has slowed down. His back is hurting him, and he needs the All-Star break. He's kind of coming into that, but he managed to, without scoring as many points as he normally would, to get a triple-double, and he rebounded 10 rebounds for a little guy. And that's he's just a guy who, he's a winner. You can tell him the way he plays on the floor. He spreads the ball around. And then you've got Mobley, who's a winner, a guy who in his last couple of games, 7 foot tall, averaging almost 18 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists. I mean, it's not at all unusual to watch Mobley at this point in his career quietly putting up 17, 7, and 5. And he's nowhere near what he's going to be. But the Cavaliers have 2 problems. One is Lauri Markkanen as a 7-foot 3. It's his position when he played for the Bulls was to shoot a lot of 3-point shots. The Cavaliers want him to beef up a little. They want him to get a little tougher down low, and he has helped the interior defense just with his length. Offensively, however, he's kind of, because he's had an injury checkered career, he's not real big time wanting to mix it up down low with some of the bigger guys in the league. And he's shooting fadeaways all the time, not going hard and strong to the basket. Isaac Okoro, who was the draft pick a couple of years ago for the Cavaliers, who has improved somewhat in his offensive shot from behind the line. He's extremely fast, extremely athletic. He's great for the transition game. He can chest up. He's 6'4", but he's strong. He can chest up against scoring guards, shooting guards. And that's, again, part of the way that the Cavaliers are winning is with their defense. But having both of those guys on the floor, theoretically, at the same time, Lauri Markkanen has been hot and cold from the three-point line. There's opportunities to be had, but the Cavaliers are going to need a 2 or a 3 going forward out of this trade deadline period. So, to me, the real question is who is available out there if we're looking at 2s.
I like Karis LeVert.
Yeah, I was just about to say. I'm hearing he's an likely, or not likely, but a legit option.
To me, there are only a few logical possibilities. And, we now have a situation because Ricky Rubio's gone for the year, that Rubio becomes a trade asset. And I hate to do that to the guy. He's 30, but he's 31 years old. He was having an incredible year. And I think that he's going to be moved. I think at the end of the year, he would have moved himself in free agency. I don't think that he wanted to spend the rest of his time in Cleveland. I think, again, it was a great resurrection for him. But now with another knee injury, ACL issue, we're going to end up parting ways with him. We have a guy, Goodwin, who is, from the G League, and, that's a hit or miss kind of situation. But there are 2 people and one of them we're going to be seeing tonight. And the Spurs were in a weird position. If I told you that we were playing the San Antonio Spurs and we were the team with the big, front court and the share the ball attitude, and the Spurs were trying to play run 'em, gun 'em basketball, you'd say, you're out of your fucking mind. We're going to look at Javonte Murray tonight, who is a guy who has improved his offensive game, though he's still only about a 44% field goal shooter from the field. And he's only at about 34 or 35 from behind the line. But he's a guy who's got length, and he's an ascending player. And the word is that the Spurs might part with him because they're neither fish nor fowl. The identity of the Spurs is sadly lacking. They've lost 4 games in a row. They're limping into the All-Star game. And you've got a 7-footer and Pirtle who can block shots and rim protect, but this is no longer the Spurs team, and Pop doesn't have. He has a system, but he can't play that system because he doesn't have that big front court anymore, and he's trying to prove he can win by playing faster. It isn't working. They're 15-26 this year. So Javonte Murray is the first guy that I'm looking at. It's a long shot. The Cavaliers would be able to land him. Possibility, though. The guy who I think the Cavaliers could land is Schroeder from the Celtics. Because the Celtics, at basically 500 at the halfway point of the year, Schroeder is a guy who, we're looking at Rajon Rondo, who's already got a sore hamstring because he played over 30 minutes in a game. He's at 35 years of age. He's not stretched out to play long stretches in the game. And he's day-to-day right now with a hamstring. And as nicely as he's fit in, he's not going to be a guy who is going to be anything more than a passer. Schroeder is averaging 16 points a game for the Celtics. He's not a great three-point shooter, but he is a penetrator, and he's a drive and kick guy. If he is able to come off the bench and to play simultaneously with Darius Garland, Garland has the ability to score. And Schroeder has averaged as much as 19 a game in Oklahoma City. So with the Thunder a couple of years ago, I kind of see those two guys. I know who you're talking about. What was the name again? Was he
LeVert? Karis LeVert.
Didn't he come out of Brooklyn?
Yeah, and Michigan.
Yeah. But again, it isn't so much for the Cavaliers as it's been proven already that you don't want instant offense kind of guy. We're looking for a starting two who has the ability to play transition. And the question is, what do you do with Okoro then?
Yeah.
And Okoro has to prove that he can. I mean, teams are leaving him unguarded. He can go to the basket. He can go strong to the basket. He has springs in his legs. But I've seen a lot of guys in the NBA who were, really supposedly the great athlete types who never really conquer the finer points of the game. I think Isaac Okoro is a hard worker, and he isn't going anywhere. But the question is, look at the difference in Cedi Osman since he gets pulled out of the starting lineup, thank God, and comes off the bench with an assigned role of don't handle the ball, don't dribble the fucking ball. Don't waste our time with that shit because you're going to turn it over. If you're coming off a screen, shoot off the screen. If you see, a drive to the basket, go in, get yourself fouled, get to the free throw line. And his confidence in simplifying the game for him, his confidence has grown. So, I don't know how many of our guys in our panel really watch the Cleveland Cavaliers. Does anybody have an opinion?
I just think they need to get another wing.
Yeah.
It's about all I got.
I wouldn't be against keeping Okoro, but I think if we keep him, we need a more consistent wing than Markkanen because he's more of a 4, and we have Mobley, so I don't really see the fit. And we have Kevin Love who comes off the bench, so he's kind of the odd man out.
Yeah, Markkanen is young, 24 years old, and how long Kevin Love can do this and his back's going to hold up. But I will say this, Kevin Love is keeping his spot on the floor by scoring points in bunches for the minutes that he's playing. But he isn't really, he's getting rebounds, throwing outlet passes, but he's really not playing any defense because he can't move anymore. So it's perfect. Him coming off the bench. He's an expensive guy coming off the bench, but he's your guy who gives you good, consistent offense. You got to have scorers, and to me, Schroeder as a backup point is going to get you some points because he's not afraid to go to the basket. He's 6'3". He has a history of having a pretty good intermediate game. And Rondo, his body is not going to hold up. At 35 years of age and 16 years in the league, he can only do so much. And he's a rental to begin with. And the problem with Schroeder is that Schroeder also would be a rental because he's free to play anywhere he wants at the end of, and he wants to start, by the way, and he's not going to start in Cleveland in a backcourt that's a pairing with Darius Garland. That's not going to happen. So,
if the Cavs do any trades, would you be against them trading Markkanen and Okoro for any a potential piece, or would you want to keep Okoro for long term?
If I were to say which guy is which, Markkanen, my concern about Markkanen is his health. It has been every year that he's played in the league that he's gotten hurt. And what we're asking of him to get down low and get down and dirty is only going to increase the chance of that happening. I don't have a problem with him coming off the bench because, again, he's a guy who mainly hoists threes. He's a perimeter guy. The thing that really hurts the Cavaliers, in my estimation, is that the guy who should be fulfilling the score the ball behind the arc guy off the bench, Dylan Windler, is the frailest player that I have seen come to Cleveland since Luke Jackson, and that was decades ago, and his body can't hold up. The thing is that Windler, if he was able to remain healthy, would be our answer to what we had when LeBron was here, and a guy that he could pass the ball off to, like Kyle Korver. Kyle Korver and Dylan Windler are similar types of players. They're perpetual motion players who can run them around screens. They can run all day long. I mean, until the very end, Kyle Korver was in incredible physical condition, and they can shoot lights out. The problem is whenever Windler wants to show that athleticism, and he's 6'8", 6'9" in height, and he goes to the basket, his body can't take the collisions that occur. And the same thing in transition. If he's got to go to the basket, he crumbles. Every time he goes to the floor, I'm afraid he's not getting up.
I do like Isaac Okoro, though. I know he's not exactly developed as much offensively yet, but to me, I think his defensive skills are so good that, I mean, he's worth holding on to and continuing to try to develop for sure.
Yeah, you're not going to get rid of him. Markkanen would be the guy. And, at a wing in the NBA is such a huge, important position. So what I'm going to be doing also is researching available threes. And the fact is that we don't have a legitimate three. A shout out to Lamar Stevens, who has worked his ass off. A guy who came from Penn State, who actually he came out of high school, a state champion out of Philadelphia, big time high school player. But by the time he got to Penn State, he had all league freshman year. And finally, as he progressed up the ladder, all a Big Ten first team, but he wasn't drafted. He was projected as number 100 in his senior year. And the reason is because he doesn't have explosion. He's not got a solid mechanical shot. He's not fast. but he's an extremely hard worker. And I really would like to see him stick with the team because he's the kind of guy who's a glue guy. And you can see that in Okoro's absence, he's played really well. I mean, a 6'6" guard, he can take people to the hole. It's not like he's going to be a high flyer, but he can body up to the basket, horse the ball up, get attract contact, get to the free throw line, trying to work himself into, he has a very odd sideways kind of release to the ball. Instead of coming over the top, he's kind of off to the side. And I'm always worried about
Lonzo
people.
Ball-esque.
Yeah, just stuff that's kind of broken looking. He shot more than his fair share of air balls to date, but he's really played hard. He gets his nose into everything, sticks his nose into everything. He's defensively aggressive, and he is Okoro's backup. He's the guy who, when Okoro needs time off, Lamar Stevens is the guy who comes on the floor. So there is a spot for him out there. Lauri Markkanen, they're going to have to give up something to get something, and they need a scoring wing.
I saw in the comments, Heston said Joe Harris. I know he's like 6'6", 6'7", but he's kind of a shooting guard, small forward. And plus, he's on contract for 3 more years, so I don't know if you would maybe swap him and Markkanen. I don't think that would be that bad, even though we'll lose the defense.
It doesn't give us what we need. I mean, Joe Harris is a guy who can shoot lights out, but he needs a distributor to get him the ball. And he's not the defensive presence of Okoro, and he's not the defensive presence even of Lamar Stevens. He's a guy who is camp behind the arc, shoot.
What about, so no Harris for Markkanen? You wouldn't like that? Just dumb straight up and maybe a pick? No? Okay.
No. I don't want Joe Harris back in Cleveland. Nothing against Joe. His dad's a good basketball man, too. Nothing against the family, but doesn't fit. The criteria we're looking for is somebody who has dynamic speed to assist us in a transition game and can score points, but somebody who's team oriented. We're not looking for the LeBron James kind of wing, folks. Okay, we're not looking for a guy who's going to pound the ball and get his. I mean, watching Jordan Clarkson the other night just made me shake my head. I got to be honest with you. It was like, that guy is forcing up shots like there's no tomorrow. And it took me back to when he played for us. And it's like, then I remember back in the Lakers, you know, he was surrounded by talent with the Lakers and he could come in and chuck the ball up. But you can see how badly it plays when he comes down the floor and just throws up air balls. And he takes heat checks when he's not hot. And can't have that. We're not looking for, Vinny the Microwave Johnson. We're not looking for instant offense here. We're looking at somebody who can fit into a team scheme and sign him for a prolonged period of time. This is a completely different situation. The Browns are in a situation where we got to get back to 2020 because we've lost ground.
Yep.
And it teeters on going the wrong way. The Cavaliers are a team like last year's Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks were a surprise to everybody, and Trae Young, of course, a very publicized player. And they get deep into the playoffs last year. This year, they got a losing record. And they just got rid of Cam Reddish. They just, they're starting to try to rebuild around Trae Young. They're not in a very great position. The Cavaliers, but for the grace of God, we need another player who is, Jared Allen is a big, burly, rebounding, rim protecting, short hook shot, dunk, alley-oop kind of guy. Evan Mobley is a remarkably skilled player who hasn't yet found his separation fadeaway, but is great. You saw him win the game. The last game we played, they're all doubling up on Darius Garland because he's the straw that stirs the drink. They're just throwing the ball to Mobley at the top of the key, and he's playing point guard. In essence, you look at what he's doing, and he's getting 7 assists a game in the last couple of games. A 7-foot guy who's 19, 20 years old. It's a remarkable thing to watch. We need somebody to take the pressure. The rap on the Cavaliers is that they're not going to outscore you as much as they're going to out hustle you, and they're going to out defense you, and that they're going to use that big front court to stop penetration. And you better be hitting your threes because nobody comes into the lane for free against the Cavaliers. That's what they've built. They need a three. So when Mobley, who gets his 7 rebounds a game, and God only knows the double-double Jared Allen, when he gets his 10 rebounds or more a game, the outlet pass goes out, and we have a surge going down the floor and allows us to score points. And the one thing that I've seen that was consistent earlier in the year was like 12-0 runs. The Cavaliers, and they were doing it by converting defense into offense. It was really something to behold. So we need people who play defense. They play both sides of the court and don't need the ball in their hands all the time. It's a challenge to find players like that, really.
So it sounds like you want like a Gordon Hayward then, or no?
Gordon Hayward to me is
Maybe a more durable version of that.
Yeah. There are people who are, and I'm real picky about this kind of thing because I don't see Gordon Hayward as being a bulldog defensively. There's a reason why players move from team to team. Injuries happen. We know the injury that he had. But it isn't just scoring the basketball. You need you need to have somebody who, when Garland does his wizardry and gets into the paint, besides throwing the alley-oop up for the slam, that there's outlet spacing on the floor so that you have somebody who can crank up the three. So you've got to have a wing who has 3-point length, distance, accuracy, and at the same time, enough speed to get down the court into transition because you steal the ball a lot. The Cavaliers scrap. Jetty Osman will reach in and slap ball away. So will Darius Garland. If you didn't see the play that broke the back of Utah, I mean, it was something to behold. They were trying to spare the clock and letting the ball roll in when they threw the inbounds. And Darius comes running back, takes the ball, and rips it out of Covington's hands and lays it up off the backboard, and bam, goaltending. And that was just like the dagger. The Cavaliers don't stop playing hard. 48 minutes of it. So everybody's got to play that way for this system to work.
Could you stop watching the Cavs if they got Ben Simmons?
If they got what?
If they got Ben Simmons.
Oh, no. Ben Simmons is a waste of time.
No, I'm saying, would you stop watching the Cavs if they got him?
They would start losing, and I would be less interested in them, yes. I mean, you don't need... you can OD on guys who are 6'11", 6'10", 6'11", 7 foot, but I mean, a guy who hasn't had, and I'm going to say something that might infuriate fans. Dwight Howard was another one. And I'll infuriate even more people and say Shaquille O'Neal was another one. It isn't enough in today's NBA to do the triple bump like Shaq used to do, knock his man out of bounds and dunk the ball. It isn't enough to be a point guard and choose to distribute the ball and never develop a perimeter shot. It's inexcusable. The young man has emotional issues, and who needs it? Who needs it? I wouldn't touch anything anyway that Philadelphia ever drafted. That organization is a mess. And the process. What is it? What
Well,
does
the
it
Phoenix Suns
become?
did go to the finals with Charles Barkley, so sometimes it pays off.
Yeah, well, sometimes. Been a long time. And so, no, Ben Simmons is something I wouldn't even consider because you'd have to give up what you have. And it just isn't worth it. I don't even know why people are talking so much about him. I find him to be an uninspired, laconic, lazy guy who just doesn't take the offseason to build his game and to grow. I think he's lame. I really do. I don't have respect. And I didn't have respect for Shaq. He never developed anything except that. Bump, bump, dunk. Bump, bump, dunk. And they let him get away with offensive fouls because he was a star playing for a star team. But Dwight Howard was the same way. Fuck Dwight Howard. I mean, what was he? He couldn't even shoot a free throw.
Well, and with Shaq, he was built like Grape Ape, so.
Yeah, but at the same time, so was Dwight Howard until he stopped taking that shit.
No,
you notice how
Dwight
he
Howard
slimmed down after the league put the hammer down about the growth hormone shit.
Well, I don't think Dwight Howard ever weighed more than 270 pounds, though.
Oh, he was muscle on muscle on muscle. He was the most unnatural looking athlete I have ever seen in my life. He was a chemistry experiment. And when the league said no more of that, he slimmed down all of a sudden. And you know what? He couldn't do it anymore. He didn't have the strength anymore to do what he used to do. And he had no other game that he could throw at you besides that. That's the thing I love about Mobley. He I don't want him dribbling around the court, God only knows. But a guy who can play down low, guy who has baby hook, guy who has a baseline shot, a guy who could even throw up an occasional three, and he'll be able to do that more and more as he gets older. And a guy who can stand at the top of the key and assess where the proper pass needs to be made and deliver an assist. You just don't find this shit in people. So, that's the kind of players we're looking for. And believe me, most of the teams in the NBA are based around, and it was what Rondo said quite honestly about being in Los Angeles. He goes, it wasn't that I didn't like it there. He goes, but I didn't have a role. It's like you come to the game and there's no expectation of you. And I can understand how you were 35 years old, and it's the way Rubio felt when he came to Cleveland. It's like, I'm the guy who can't shoot the ball, and I'm kind of a wizard with the ball. I'm a Euro League guy, and I've gotten hurt in the past, and I've played with teams that didn't really do very well. And he wanted to prove that he could do more stuff and have a role with the team that was willing to give him the opportunity, not just to put the ball on the floor, but to actually shoot it. And for Rondo, it's not absolutely shooting it. For Rondo, it's knowing I'm going to get 20 minutes a night, and this is what I'm here to make these guys smarter and to look better. Those are the types of players you need. And good luck finding it. In a wing, the other guy they keep mentioning, and he used to play for the Clippers, and Aaron Gordon. And it's like Aaron Gordon can shoot lights out from behind the arc 45.6% this year. But damn it, he is not a defensive presence at all. You gotta have a gritty player. So, well, it's 9 after 7, and I could rant on. I'm going to be watching the game at 8:30 tonight, and we'll be talking about it more come Monday. And, of course, we have a whole weekend of football that I frankly don't care about, but we'll watch because this is what I do. What I do.
The Raiders.
All right. Well, we'll see what Derek Carr comes up with and how many interceptions when it counts. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I'm funning you. Thanks for joining me on Moohead Radio. Thanks to the panel, Peter and Brian and Derek. Thanks. And do your homework because I'll be doing mine, and we'll be back again on Monday to talk more
Especially
Browns.
you, Key. See you Monday.
Yep, see you, Key, and we'll be back again on Monday. Until then, hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Good night.